Okay, so Chris, I've known for many, many years. We met originally at iOS Dev UK probably 6 years ago, 7 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe even longer than that. Didn't talk for many, many years after iOS Dev UK, and then randomly bumped into each other last year. Over at NS Manchester, possibly,
Yeah,
somewhere over there. He was at Codemobile last year. I gave a fantastic talk on Cocoa Pods. We've actually been talking quite a lot about Cocoa Pods over this week because your directories are kind of dying. I think we were talking about sort of Swift Package Manager and all of those sorts of things, which seem to be the future. But it was still a very good talk, which was good. So we invited him back this year. And the final talk of the conference is accessibility without the API. So please welcome Chris.
Right, thanks very much, Steve. Right, good afternoon, everyone. As Steve said, I'm Chris Barker. I'm the senior iOS developer for M Brown. Let's move across. 1 second. M Brown Group, you might know us for our fashion brands, which are Simply Be, JD Williams, and Giacomo. We also do Fashion World as well. We're a small mobile app team, about 10 developers in total, working to push out iOS and Android branded apps. So, what got me started on accessibility? So, this kind of talk started about 12 months ago, and I was doing lunch and learn at M Brown on the architecture of the M Brown app, as we call it, which is kind of all the apps put together. And I touched on a little bit about how we use accessibility to aid our UI tests, and how, if you was to write good UI tests, obviously the KIF framework that we use lets kind of piggybacks off the accessibility identifiers. So if you write good UI tests, you're going to help yourself out with accessibility, and vice versa. And it picked a few ears up, and a few people came over to me, and someone did the question session at the end, and everyone was asking bits and pieces. And one person said to me, "Do you follow X, Y, and Z standards?" And I was kind of like, "What?" I was like proper like rabbit in the headlight moments, and I was like, yeah, I think we do. So obviously, I ran off and had a look, and it turned out that these standards that we're talking about were more apps and websites based in the public sector. But it got me thinking about accessibility, and the fact that that wasn't on my radar at all, and it really should have been, because I've worked in public sector before with websites. I thought we need to do a little bit more to make people aware. So it got me thinking about a podcast that I heard, probably getting on for about 12 to 18 months ago now. It was the iDeveloper Code one with Scotty and John Fox. And they recommended this book, which is Accessibility for Everyone by Laura Kalbag, which is this one I've got here. Obviously, it's mainly web-focused, but it's got some really interesting points, and I actually just want to read a little paragraph out of it, if I can. So, one of the things it says here is, the distinction between universal and accessible design is subtle but important. Accessible design considers the needs of people with disabilities. So, for example, accessible design might result in a building having a wheelchair ramp attached to its far side. As an afterthought, it might not be convenient for people using wheelchairs, and is unlikely to be used for people who find it faster to use the stairs, but at least there's some form of access. So I'm not going to go into too much of that right now, but I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. But it was a really interesting, powerful paragraph. But like I said, I'll come back to that. But it's a great book from cover to cover. If you've got any interest in accessibility, I do recommend you getting hold of a copy. So this got me going about accessibility, and after reading the book and after doing that small talk at work, it was kind of like, right, okay, inspirational email day. So rattled together about 10:30 at night, email about accessibility and how we need to think more about it and what can we do to think more about it. And it coincided with Global Accessibility Awareness Day, which is a group of people who have got together around the world who I think it's every third Thursday in May. They come together, and it's just basically a blog post or people with general awareness about it. It's mainly focused around web, but there's no reason why we can't try and push apps into this at all. So like I said, inspirational email went around at work. What can we do to make this better? So one of the things that we started to do, obviously I touched on before about how we use the UI test to aid accessibility and vice versa, is one of the first things we did is update the coding standards document at work and said, basically, we've got to do this. We've got to look at accessibility when we're putting new features in, whether it just be adding the identifiers in, the labels, or anything, because even the small differences, you can add in makes a big difference. For example, you look at one of our apps with the banners on the front. The banners that get uploaded to one of the Simply Be apps, they've just got random characters in front of them. Without the accessibility identifiers, they're just going to read out them random characters and mean nothing. You know, you put the labels in, it takes 5 minutes to do that, if that, and you've got access for your UI tests in there, and straight away, and you've fixed access, not fixed, but you've kind of helped support accessibility, and it's just them little things that make the difference. So I was thinking, what else can we do? You know, how further up the chain can we go with this? So, you know, and I was chatting to the product owner about it. I said, you know, it's okay for us as developers to put these into the app, but we need to get more people, we need to get more buy-in from the business. So that's anything from the product owners, from the UI and the UX guys, you know, and even to upper management. Let's just, you know, not teach them, but let's kind of preach a little bit more about how important accessibility is, which is kind of where this talk all kind of come along to. So, let's see now. So I thought to myself, okay, right, what do we have as a user? What do we have in terms of available options as an iOS user? So accessibility, this is the current accessibility options that are in iOS 12.1.2. The one that I'm going to be more interested in today is the display accommodations, and which will lead on to where this talk's going shortly. And it was interesting because I had a chat with a friend who's quite he's been on the UI UX scene for many years now, quite well respected. And I said to him, you know, he's worked in web and mobile. I said, what's your thoughts on accessibility? Where are you going with this? And he kind of said to me, he said truthfully, he says we only really care about it for the web. And I said, well, why is that? He said, well, doesn't iOS and Android take care of it yourself? I was like, well, no, not really, no. So again, it's that thought process, you know. And I'm not saying that he speaks for everyone out there in the UI UX world, but it's just that was his view, and I'm sure others share the same as well. So I thought, okay, let's have a look and let's see what options are available. So obviously we're going to go through all these. I'm going to go through all of them. I'm going to go through some of them shortly. So again, I'm collecting all this information, thinking, okay, well, what is this about accessibility? We've got this area here. We've got the developer side of it. We've got the business buy-in. We've got, you know, what people think about it. You know, and then one day I met a girl called Neve. Now, for those of you, I know some of you know me in the room, I have a 12-year-old daughter, and like all 12-year-old daughters, they have a BFF. And her BFF is a girl called Neve, who's 13. I was chatting with Neve one day, and it turns out they was doing some homework at my house and with my daughter, and it turns out she was writing on yellow paper. And I said, what have you got yellow paper for? And she went, well, I've got Irlen syndrome. I was like, oh, okay, what's that? So she started to explain it a little bit to me. And basically, it's a subform of dyslexia, which kind of affects people in many different ways. So it's actually, the official title is it's a perpetual processing disorder. It's not an optical problem, I've been told. She's quite keen on letting me know that. It can manifest itself in many different ways, things from fatigue, eye strain, headaches, print, and many more. Neve's specific issue that she has with it is print, which is what we're going to come on to. And this is kind of the yellow paper that she wrote, and these are the notes that she wrote for me for the talk, all on the yellow paper. So this is what she has to do every single day in school. And then she has to cut it out and put it in school books. So it's just yellow paper like that. She also has a yellow overlay as well, Perspex overlay, which for going over for reading books as well, which is it's quite interesting. I couldn't get one of those in today, but anyway. So what effect does this have? I don't know, what effects does it have on Neve? Well, to her own words, basically, words on paper move, disappear, they multiply, and the letters jumble up. And also, sometimes in between spaces, there are little squiggly lines as well, moving around. And for that can lead to headaches, just basic frustration for a 13-year-old, you know, ends up slamming the book down. But more importantly, I say more importantly for this talk, slamming the phone down. So I asked her, I said, okay, so it's interesting, kind of, about how, you know, you deal with this. I said, so how do you get on with phones? And she goes, do you have the same problem? She says, well, yeah, I do. Right, okay. So yeah, this were her comments. So words just jump across the screen was one of the phrases to use. So I said, okay, so tell me about the apps that you use on a daily basis, as I'm interested. So I started to kill out an idea for things I wanted to ask and avenues I wanted to explore. So obviously, no surprise, there are 4 favourite apps. So you've got Instagram, Snapchat, iMessage, and Gmail. So Instagram, basically, generally okay, she said, with using that, because obviously it's predominantly images. But when it comes to reading captions or direct messages, forget it, game over. It's too much. She literally uses it just for the pictures, nothing else. Again, Snapchat's fine for the pictures, but anything comes with the message side of it, which I didn't realise it had, but anything to do with the message side of it, again, it's just a jumble. It's a no-go for her. iMessage is one of the ones that she does actually favour, because of the blue and the green, depending if she's sending an iMessage or a normal SMS text message, it does actually help her a lot. She's able to do that. She still has the problem, don't get me wrong, but it's just a little bit easier. And this was the big one for me, which was Gmail. Gmail, she said, is just an absolute nightmare. It can be, anything from, say, something like 3 or 4 paragraph email. It's just, she'll have a go, she'll try and read it, but ends up just putting the phone down and getting someone else to do it for her. She can sit with her with the overlay over a phone. That kind of helps a little bit, but obviously, you don't want to be walking around checking your emails and having to go and grab your overlay like that. I mean, who's going to stand on the train like that, going with the overlay, or, you're hanging around in the playground at school like, oh, I was checking your phone, hold on, let me just get my overlay out. So, it's not going to happen. So Gmail was, like I said, short sentences, not as bad, but still a problem. Right. So I ran another, because I thought, okay, I'm going to do a bit of a case study here on based on how she interacts with shopping apps. Obviously, was being at Brown doing the shopping apps. I was interested to see, how it might affect some of our customers. So I give her a case study, and what I wanted her to do, I sat there with her and I said, okay, I need you to, 2 scenarios. First one is, I want you to sit there for 2 minutes now, searching for a birthday present for my daughter, her best friend, Madeline. Okay, no problem. So during that 2 minutes, what I was doing was I was chatting away, she was searching for products. I said, full concentration, searching for products. And within that 2 minutes, I kept tapping her on the shoulder, like distracting her, taking her eye away, on purpose. She didn't realise I was doing it, she just thought I was being irritating. But every 2 minutes, I just kept tapping her on the shoulder, Neve, look at me, Neve, look at me. And I think she was going to hit me at one point. But she just kept, okay, so 2 minutes is up, brilliant. So I said, well, okay, done that now. I said, right, I was purposely irritating you then. What I want you to do is do the same thing, look for a different product for your mum, look for some jewellery, something like that. But I want 2 minutes looking at the phone, no distractions. And I mean, silence. And she did it again. So basically, so I asked her on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being absolutely fine, yeah, no problem whatsoever, 10 being, oh my God, this is going to make me throw up. How did the 2 scenarios kind of pan out? And she said, well, with the distractions, it was more of a 6 or a 7 out of 10. But with full concentration, it was more of a 4 or a 5. So actually, the distraction, her looking away and coming back, actually caused more of a problem. I actually thought it would be the other way around. I thought the distraction would let her rest for a moment, put her concentration back on, but no, because she had to reconcentrate. Which I thought was interesting, because obviously going back to the Gmail scenario, where she's concentrating on all the words on the screen, multiple paragraphs, that was when it became a problem. So it all depends on what you're looking at and the content. It's different for every scenario. So the next bit is, so that was quite interesting. So the next bit was this understanding what I call the colour preference. So the colour preference is, again, going back to this yellow paper. Now, obviously, Neve uses yellow paper to write on. She uses the yellow overlay, but it's not just yellow that works for everyone with Irlen syndrome. People can have red, blues, I think there's even a green as well. One of the things that she said is, I thought was quite good, you don't just get prescribed a colour. And she actually wrote that in these notes there, because you don't get prescribed a colour, it's what works for you. And more or less it's that, throughout the entire time that you have the problem. It tends not to change from what I've been reading. Other people have said, if they've stuck with red from an early age, red works for them for a long time. So will it solve it for everyone? Well, you're not going to be able to turn around. If I solve this problem for Neve, not that I said I can solve it, but if I did, is it going to solve it for everyone? Well, the answer is straight, no, it's not. So it moves on to the next section. So, okay, well, as a user now, not as an app developer, as an app user, as a mobile phone user, iOS or Android, obviously it's predominantly iOS-based talk, what options do we have available? So going back to the accessibility options we saw before, there's a few there, and there's a lot more than this, but I picked out the ones that I thought were more relevant to the topic. So obviously there's night shift, which we all remember from, I think it was iOS 9.3 that came out. Increased contrast, smart and classic invert, and also reduced white point. So I thought, okay, I'm going to run these same tests with her, no distractions, using the app with each one of these features turned on, and just see how it went. So obviously, first of all, night shift. And basically, it was an oh my gosh moment when she started using the app. She said, this is so much better. Can I have this on all the time? Because obviously I started off by telling her it's scheduled between I think 11 and 7 by default. But yeah, there is you can have this on all time button. She was gobsmacked. She had no idea that this existed. Immediately this was like, yeah, this works perfect. This is great. And so I said, okay, go back through the Simply Be app, do the same test again. Yeah, fine. And I mean, it was dropping it down. So I think she said it's between a 3 and a 4, you know, for 2 minutes. 2 minutes, both with disturbed concentration and with full concentration as well. And she was absolutely over the moon. She's actually still got it on now. This from when I first did this case study with her. So that was great. So then I repeated it again with increased contrast, which apparently improves readability with increased colour contrast and text styling adjustments. So flick that on, did the same test again. So it's slightly better than without any options on, but again, it was all about this night shift at this point. You know, she was really enjoying the fact that this night shift. I really should have probably left that to last, but anyway, I just went in the deep end with that one because it was literally, and I mean, you know, even like I got a text message off her mum saying, "Can I have this night shift on as well?" I thought, you don't have Irlen syndrome, but anyway. So yeah. So then the next one was the Smart Invert and Classic Invert, which is, I call it iOS dark mode, right? And I'm sure we've all played this a few times. Basically, it inverts the whole colours, and it's really weird because when you do a screenshot of the invert, it comes out like that when it really should be black. I thought it was, you know, obviously it shows you that it's not changing the skin, it's not changing the colour of the canvas or anything like that on iOS. It's just obviously some display technology that's being used. So, but I think I'm sure we've all seen it before. As like I said, some people call it dark mode in iOS, apart from the fact it does mess up all your apps. So again, same with that with Smart Invert and Classic Invert. She said 4 and 5, maybe 6 on that 1 out of 10. It did help, but I think the fact that it just didn't look cool at all, and she didn't want to walk, you know, because like who wants to walk around school with that on the phone and going through all the apps or flicking it off and on for apps that, you know, she needs to see images and pictures for. So it was good, but again, it was still about this bloody night shift. So and the last one I tried with her was Reduce White Point, which reduces the intensity of bright colours. So flick that one on and basically, not much difference. Okay, fair enough. So I thought that was interesting to see, and it was really interesting that there was just no idea that she could go into accessibility settings and play around with this and try and find something that was suitable for her. And I know part of me was shocked, but then at the same time, part of me was like, well, do you really expect 13-year-old kids to know this? And I don't know. It's, you know, where do we need to put the awareness? Something I'll touch on the conclusion, but I found it really interesting. It was a real eye-opener. So one of the next things I asked myself was, do the accessibility guidelines help for developers from us? So, well, actually, I was quite shocked, actually. Yes, they do. And this is taken from Apple's human interface guidelines on the site, and that bottom paragraph, use sufficient colour contrast ratios, I thought was really interesting because there's no real mention there about using an API. It is what it says it is. It is a guideline. It's kind of was a bit of a changer because when I started originally writing this talk or getting the idea for it, it was all about, hence the title really, it was all about, you know, forget about the APIs, forget about this, we've got to make the difference as developers. But actually, you know, Apple kind of see that there is a problem there, and they do kind of give you a point in the right direction. So it's definitely worth as developers just every now and again refreshing yourself with this and thinking, you know what, am I doing everything here? You know, I've dotted the I and crossed the T's in terms of the app structure and the guidelines that Apple want me to follow or advise me to follow. So after that, I thought to myself, okay, so what do other apps do? # dark mode. So I looked at a few other apps, predominantly looking at obviously other shopping apps and also the apps that Neve uses on a daily basis. So Instagram, WhatsApp and Facebook, iOS, ASOS, Boohoo and Twitter. Now, the reason I put Twitter at the bottom is a good reason. Majority of them, predominant colour is white. And when I say white, I'm not just talking about any white, I'm talking about like DAS, whitest white. You know, and it's natural, we put things on a white background, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that, don't get me wrong. But it's just what we do. Obviously, Twitter is one of the apps that does have a dark mode. And this kind of goes back to the kind of the comment in the book section of the book I read earlier, which was like, you know, I trawled the internet to try and see if there was anything about, you know, Twitter putting the dark mode in for accessibility reasons, or, you know, is it for that, or is it just because we're geeks like having dark mode? Because, you know, I like having dark mode on my ID. You know, is it for that reason? And I couldn't find anything at all, so it made me think, well, is that been a bit of a bolt-on? Is that, oh, you know what, we'll put dark mode in, it's going to help with accessibility. You know, again, which is fine, because it's better, let's face it is better than doing nothing. But it's interesting, the majority of them were predominantly white. So it's kind of moved me on to one of the last case studies, which is the interesting one for me. So it's what little differences can we make to our apps that you know, that will automatically make this a better experience for users without them having to think about accessibility settings, without having to think about, be aware of dark mode and night shift and stuff like that. So what I did is I thought, okay, I'm going to make some changes to our app. So obviously, whiter than white is the colour. So I thought, well, the first thing I was going to do, I'd look at the various shades of white. This is taken off the web. I looked at that and I thought, oh, a little bit harsh that, because we don't want to go full dark at the end. So I decided to go a little bit more subtle, and I moved up what's called the monochromatic scale of white. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to move that up in increments. I'm going to change the app, the background of the app on the product list page, and I'm going to get Neve to run the two tests again, with or without distractions. So first one I did, which was here. So I changed the background to F2, 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 and it was, yes, it was slightly better, you know. The words didn't jump out a little bit, didn't jump out as much as they did before. Still jumped around a little bit, you know, which can be quite frustrating, you know, because you look at something like that and you think, why am I seeing the word denim there? And obviously, because you don't know it's a denim jacket, and the words are all jumbled up. You know, she'll be at one point reading denim scarf and stuff like that. But the words were still jumbled. There's still them snakes in between the lines, but it wasn't. She didn't have to concentrate as much, which was a start. So I moved further up the monochromatic scale, E5, 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 and she basically said it's the same. There was no difference there whatsoever. So right, okay then. So they went up a little bit more to D8, and she's much better. So at this point now, she's saying it's now a 6 out of 10. It was still no night shift, but it was 6 out of 10. And then I did this. So I got her what she sells, non-prescribed colour, and I put that in the app. Bang, straight away, yeah, that's better than night shift. That's a 3 out of 10, straight away there. You know, and she said I could sit and read that, no problem. I could choose a product. It wouldn't cause me a problem. That is perfect for me. And I thought it was really interesting because it was, you know, obviously we're not going to turn around and you know, you're not going to have a settings page in everyone's app that says you can choose your background colour. You know, it's just not going to work. But it is just about those little things. So, you know, we're not going to turn around and start saying to people, yeah, you need to do this. You need to support every variation of you know, the prescribed colour for people who have Irlen syndrome, because that would just be crazy. But you could take a step back and you could maybe look at doing something that's much better, or something that's, say, you know, slightly better than before. You know, it's just about finding that balance. It's about understanding more than anything. And that was kind of the end of the case studies, really. So the conclusion to all this is, well, I initially wanted to come here with a solution, and then after thinking about it more and reading into it more, I've not actually come here to share a solution. It's just more of an understanding of what's going on. You know, there's various different avenues that you can take to help tackle this problem. You know, you can go back to where I started with just adding basic, you know, using the APIs, having basic accessibility into, you know, that'll aid you as developers with your UI and your accessibility handling. You can read up more about the APIs and see what they can do. You can learn more about you can read up more on the developer guidelines. Ask yourself, how would you fix a problem for someone that you know who has this? You know, what problems do they have? Or, you know, maybe review your app, review your guidelines, review your coding standards. It's just see how you can incorporate the little things within your app. It's just more of having a general awareness of the problems that are out there. So one of the things is just basically, one of the questions I think I'll leave with today is, what can you do to help someone with an impairment? The chances are, if you do help them or find a way to help them, you are helping someone else as well. So, and that's everything from me today. So thank you very much.
If you did decide to put these colours into your app to support Irlen's, is there any resources that give you the actual hex values? Tell the exact colours
There
to
is,
use?
yes. I think if you go to that link, I'll put it in the. I've actually got some there. There are the links that I shall show them. Yeah, they don't give you the exact hex values, but they give you the rough shades of it, so you can kind of play around and work it out. I tried a couple of different ones with Neve before I got the bang on colour that I wanted, and yeah, so there's no exact colours.
Hello,
Hiya.
nice talk, thank you.
Thank you.
So I know on Android, not sure about iOS, but there's the possibility of having colour filters over the top of everything.
Yes,
That's easy to
there is.
toggle on.
Yeah, there is on iOS as well. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you find something like that?
Say again, sorry.
Did you test with something like that with her?
I didn't know. I thought I didn't want to go down every single avenue, And the original focus of this talk was to do it more from a developer perspective rather than. But I still, as I read more into the fact that iOS does give you these options, I thought it was good to touch on it. But I don't want to go into detail. Yes, you can have color overlay filters on in iOS as well. But again, it's more about that awareness. She wasn't even aware that night shift existed at this point. So to go in and to start messing around with colors and stuff like that was, is kind of, I think, too deep really for a user to understand. I think it's more, how can we solve it? Or what I wanted to try and get across was more, how can we solve it as developers? But yeah, there are options as well in iOS to do that.
Great, thank you.
Cheers.
Anyone else? In that case, please thank Chris.
Thank you.